Now we should head over to the cheerio documentation. So I'm taking you to this documentation because cheerio is quite unique than the other JavaScript, the actual JavaScript modules that are found in Node Package Manager. Uh, in other modules, you don't have to teach your module anything. But in cheerio, what you need to do is to use this load method inside this cheerio object, and then you'll have to use this method to insert some sort of HTML, raw HTML content inside this method to teach your cheerio object that you're going to use an HTML that's more of like the example that's included inside this load method. So how do we do that for our application? It's pretty simple. We have already created the object by calling in the cheerio module from our repository. So now what we need to do is to create another variable. Now let me tell you, this might be confusing for you, this variable name, but this is completely valid in terms of programming. If you use that in other programming, and especially in JavaScript programming language, it's valid. So you can use alphabets, you can use numeric values or numbers from 0 to 1, you can use underscore, and you can also use a $sign to name your functions or variables. So in this context, this type of name is very useful because it actually tries to synchronize our code as much as like the JQuery wrapper function. So I'm going to show you how it's going to work. So let's call the cheerio object, then let's teach our cheerio object some HTML. So how do we teach that? As I was talking about, if you look at this documentation, what this author, the author of this module is telling us, it's that we need to teach this cheerio some sort of, we need to pass in some sort of raw HTML content inside this as an argument to this load method. So we do that, we already have that raw content. So where did we find the raw content? So when we read this file, when we read this entire file through our asynchronous read file method, it already extracted all this data from this template, and then it passed that data as a raw HTML content to this HTML content argument in this asynchronous function. In this anonymous function, sorry. So now we have got the raw HTML content. So to teach our cheerio object how to use HTML and how to understand our template, we need to pass in this HTML raw content, not the one that we have already polished inside this, that we have already polished in our previous videos or on line 11. So we need to pass in the raw content, and we are ready to use this in our page. So now let's actually create an unordered list. Now if you look at this list, if you look at this raw database structure, we have got a bunch of titles. Now to make our presentation a little more precise and presentable, to make our template or to make our view a little more presentable to the visitor, we can show this using an unordered list. So typically you would have done something like this. If we did not have this handler, if you were only creating this HTML template, then you would have chosen to written the unordered list like this. Maybe you would have used a class, assigned a class, and maybe that class would have had this sort of value, and then inside this unordered list you would have included several list elements, like you would have gone for, let me copy this, you would have gone for listing all your uh, all your blog titles using this li element, li HTML element. So this is not the way that we are intending to work. This would have worked if we only intended to use the HTML template rather than using the JSON database replica and the server. But we don't need this, so we are going to get back to our original position. So now what we can do is to create that UL or that unordered list dynamically. We're going to assign that class dynamically through our server. So our server is going to take the lead. Our server is going to manipulate or trick the browser into thinking that this HTML template actually contains some sort of unordered list, and that unordered list has a bunch of title inside it, enclosed in li or list element tags. So how do we do that? So it's pretty easy. That's where this cheerio variable will be used. Now this variable is no longer a simple variable. This has now become an object. So let me create another variable called featured list, and then you can also use this variable as a function. So this has got two types of usage. So this cheerio variable will help you to use it as a function and also as something as like the object. So how do we use that as a function? So you might have worked with the JQuery wrapper function. So the JQuery wrapper function looks something like $, then parenthesis, and then the wrapper function is used to select some sort of element. Like if you want to select this element, this div tag, which has got the class featured, which has got the class name featured, what you need to do is that you, inside the double quotation marks, you write the div, then followed by a dot, and then featured. That's how you use the jQuery wrapper function to select, or the selector function to select